Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday live stream with Exposure Ninja. And today I'm going to be joined by Andy Tuxford, who's our head of SEO here at our digital marketing agency. Hello, Andy. Welcome to the stream.
Be here.
So perhaps, Andy, you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell everybody what you do at Exposure Ninja.
Okay, so I'm Andy. I'm the head of the SEO team at Exposure Ninja. So I run the team with my SEO ninjas underneath me that do all the magic that goes on campaigns. So I'm heading that up, helping support those guys, develop them, and essentially I'm there to make sure they can be the best SEOs they possibly can be.
Awesome, and we very much have a lot of fantastic SEO ninjas at Exposure Ninja. Today we're going to be talking about what to do if your Google ranking drops. And is there anything been happening recently that's caused us to choose that as a topic, Andy?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit happening recently. As most people know, Google's constantly twiddling with their algorithm and changing things, and there's hundreds of these happens per year, but they have the bigger ones called the broad core updates, which is when they change something significant, and you only get a few of those per year. And we've had, I think, 2 of them recently, and another one coming up next month, and a couple of other smaller updates alongside as well. So quite a bit of changes in the Google landscape at the moment.
They absolutely are. As Andy covered, we're going to talk about ranking drops and basically what you can do to reverse those, or what you can do to kind of prevent those from happening by doing good SEO on your website, doing nice and clean SEO. But before we get started, it'd be great to know where everybody's watching from today. So just drop your location in the chat. We have some good locations. Warrington, lovely part of the world. Where else we've got people watching from today? It'd be great to see. Also, before we get started, I'm going to be giving away a copy of How to Get to the Top of Google. To get a copy of this, all you have to do is ask a question. So if you have a question for myself or for Andy, just drop the hashtag ask in the chat along with your question, and we'll pick those up at the end. So let's get started. We'll just swap over to here. We're going to talk about what to do if your Google ranking drops. And some of you may have had that happen in the last couple of weeks, as Andy has covered. There has been a Google update, but there's actually been more than one, as we're going to discuss now. So if you do have a question, we're going to answer those at the end. Do just hold on to them, but you can drop them into the chat and we'll pick up as many as we can. If you do use that hashtag ask, I will give away a copy of the book, and I'll post it to you. Nice, brand new copy, version 2021. Cool. The caveat I would definitely throw up is that if you have had an issue with your Google ranking in the last couple of weeks because of the broad core algorithm update that happened in June, and you'd like a bit of advice, like some tips on what you should be doing to improve your marketing, improve your ranking, reverse that decrease, I highly recommend you ask for a free marketing review. You can go to exposureninja.com/review, leave us your details, and we'll basically record a 15-minute video outlining not only what we can do to reverse any ranking decrease that you might have had, but what we can do to give you some long-term increases in traffic, ranking, leads, and sales. So at the end of things, how we're going to increase your revenue. So do go to exposureninja.com/review to request a free review of your website. Cool. So, Andy, there's a real summer of algorithm updates, aren't there?
Yeah, there's quite a few coming. So we've just recently had one, as it says there, in the June 2021 update. So that happened the 3rd of June, I believe it was, but right at the beginning of June. So we've had that one, with that one split into 2. So Google told us they're splitting into 2. We've got the second half of that coming in July at some point. We don't know exactly when, they've not told us. We've then had, there's been a span update earlier this week. We had the user experience update last week. So there's been quite a few all coming through, all changing things about how Google evaluates sites and determines where it's going to rank each site.
Yeah, so as Andy mentioned, the one in June is a broad core update, which basically means they're doing a big, not like a wholesale change, but something significant. So they do daily changes. They test things in the UK, they test things in Germany, anywhere you have Google working. So they all happen all the time, like A/B tests kind of thing. But then once they're happy with something, they'll just release it to everyone all in one go. But in this case, they're actually splitting the broad core update that they would normally do into 2 pieces. So we've got the one in June, which just dropped. There's a second half of that that's going to drop in July as well. So they mentioned here that they had something they wanted to push out. It wasn't quite ready. They're going to push out one now, and then they're going to push out another one in July. So if you have had some drops now in your keyword ranking, you may see them reversed, or things might get worse. If you've had a drop now, who knows? Maybe the second half might be worse. That's another good reason to keep watching to the end of this and make sure that your website is well optimized for ranking. Another update that we had the last couple of months was the product reviews update. So basically, Google tried to take out all of those, how should I say this, like affiliate product review websites where people are just putting any old content together as long as there's a link back to Amazon or something like that. From what I've read the last couple of days, the June update was an extension of that as well. So not only was a broader update, the product reviews update was pushed a little bit further too. So yeah, we've got lots of updates going on, and Google has lots of advice on what you should do to kind of proactively improve your website for improved ranking, making sure you don't get hit by these broad core updates. So that's definitely worth reading. You can go and look at that. But this webinar today will cover a lot of what's included there, plus our recommendations too. And as Andy covered, the page experience update also has dropped in the middle of all this and should be complete by the end of August. So, Andy, perhaps you'd like to go into a bit more detail about what that product experience update is.
Okay, so the page experience update, it's Google's been talking about this for some time. They actually wanted to drop it on us last year, but because of everything that was happening last year, people were a little busy with other things. So Google decided to delay it a bit more rather than dropping something else on businesses to deal with that were already trying to navigate through all the changes that COVID brought for us. So they pushed it back to this year. So it's now started coming out and it's rolling out. It's a slow rollout, as Google has said. It's going to, normally their broad core updates roll out in a week to 2 weeks. This one's started rolling out, I believe it was last week, and is going to about the end of August. So it's a bit slower. It might be a bit of a slow burn, and you might not see some drastic movement suddenly, might be more over time. But what the Core Web Vital or the user experience update is, getting ahead of myself there, is about Core Web Vitals, as Google calls them, which are page experience metrics. So essentially, a lot of it boils down to how quickly your site loads and how responsive your site is. So I know Tim, our head of SEO, head of Exposure Ninja, did a
he's after your job, Andy.
It'd be a bit of a step down for him.
Yeah.
He did a webinar on this a little while ago, so that's worth a watch to find out a bit more detail on Core Web Vitals and what they are. I could spend all day talking about them because there's quite a bit of detail, so we won't go into loads here, but I'd recommend watching that if you're a bit unsure about what Core Web Vitals are. Go and check that webinar out because it has a lot of detail on it, and they are becoming important for your website.
Yeah, it's like anybody who's been following SEO for a while will know the page speed has always been a key factor, not only for ranking, but also for user experience. So above all else, Google wants to give people the best experience of the web possible, and that's why the best performing websites, but the top ranking websites are those that are pretty fast to use. They're not bulky. They're not full of ads, and the page experience, this Core Web Vitals update, is a continuation of that. But there's also another update as well. There's the one that just rolled out the other day. Although I'm hearing it's not been like a big impact update, is a spam update. Do you know much about that, Andy?
Yeah, so Google releases, this one's fallen in the middle of this summer of updates, but Google releases spam updates. It does these spam updates several times a year normally, so you will get 3 or 4 of these per year normally, and you don't usually see much impact. It's more just a strengthening of their best guidance, the things that are telling you already. Basically, don't do black hat SEO is basically the main from it. It's just update for them to keep on top of and just responding to these what we call black hat SEO, these SEO tactics that aren't good for users, because ultimately that's what Google's trying to achieve. It's trying to give the best experience to its users. There are things you can do to maybe game the algorithm a little bit to get advantage, which isn't great for your users, which is what Google wants to combat against, and that's what it's trying to do with these spam updates. It's obviously because people are doing that, the tactics are always changing, so Google's just regularly releasing these updates just to respond to those and just to make sure users are getting a good experience when they're using Google and they're not being dumped onto horrible, terrible websites just because they've used some exploit to game the system.
For anybody who's curious about what Black Hat SEO is or what the impact of that is, both positively and negatively, we do have a video on the channel called Black Hat SEO. So if you go into YouTube and just type Black Hat SEO Exposure Ninja, that video should come up top. It's a really good interview with someone who used to do Black Hat SEO in the past. If you're unfamiliar with it, I think that's probably the best place to possibly learn about it. In terms of like algorithm updates, I know that between us, Andy, we use SEMrush's sensor to track when the algorithm is changing. It's great that Google are now a bit more vocal about which changes are happening, like the big broad core updates. But there are also some good trackers as well. I know that, again, we use SEMrush's sensor. You can change it for how volatile the search results are changing for desktop and mobile, but also by country as well. So you might see the UK is more having some earlier changes than other countries as well. But there are also some other sensors you can use as well. And are you familiar? Do you use any of those?
So SEMrush sensor and Mozcast are the ones I generally lean towards. Mm-hmm. So, but whichever tool you choose to use, they all give you. And you can see in the graphs there that they are showing us they're all following basically the same pattern. They're all giving you the same information. So just find the one that you prefer, you're more comfortable with, you find easier to read, and just stick with that. But you can't. There's no real wrong choice.
Yeah, I really like the Moz one because they also tell you how various parts of the search results are changing. So, for example, if there are more websites with HTTPS rather than HTTP in the algorithm, it'll tell you that there's now 25% compared to yesterday. 20% have HTTPS in their URL and stuff like that, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I like SEMrush Sensor as well, because you can split by niche,
that's great.
News or entertainment or sports or whatever it may be. You can split by niche, and at the bottom of it tells you the rich features as well, how they're changing. So
awesome.
3% more sites now have ads at the top of them. 2% more sites have local listings in them. 5% less sites have people also ask boxes, things like that. So
I know Rank Ranger definitely have the same on theirs as well. So if anybody's tossing up the choice between the two, Rank Ranger and Moz are definitely good ones for tracking all kinds of different parts of how the search results change over time. So another good way of tracking like algorithm updates as well is to follow people who write about them, who analyze the different changes. I'm just going to blow this up a little bit more. Marie Haynes has for many years been writing about the various algorithm changes that happen. So Marie's team, as well as Marie herself, they keep a long list of things that happen. They also include like even the slight little changes, the variations in the search results, or any activity they think is meaningful, and not just these broad core updates. So if they see that there's been high activity on a weekend and there's been nothing from Google about how those have changed, then Marie's team will put those on there. And you can, if you do see that your ranking has dropped or your organic traffic has dropped at any point, you can go back and kind of cross-reference the dates with, okay, well, on March the 3rd, I had a drop. Was there an update on there? So this is a great place to check out as well. There are a few people that I really, or a few people in businesses I turn to regularly when it comes to analysis of algorithm updates. So I'm a big fan of Glenn Gabe. I think Glenn Gabe's analysis are fantastic. Has access to a lot of different websites. You can check like the back end, and you get like some more behind the scenes observations of how websites have changed compared to some other analysis, which is just an exterior, I checked it on the tool and it looks like that website dropped. Glenn tends to back it up with websites he has access to as well. But Barry Schwartz as well, who writes, is the owner and writer of a couple of different, I can't remember the name. I can't believe this. I've been in SEO for forever and I can't remember the name of the websites that he runs. Is this Search Engine Land, Andy?
It's one of them. There's
Blue.
a few of them with very similar names. I can't remember exactly which.
Yeah.
I think about 3 or 4 of them with almost identical names.
Yeah.
Your search engine map, search engine roundtable, search engine journal.
So I think it's roundtable. Yeah, I think you're right. I can't believe it. I've been reading some of these for years. Still don't remember. Let's have a look. Yeah, search engine roundtable. There you go. As well as, Systrix and Searchmetrics. So Systrix and Searchmetrics are both SEO tools where you can track your website, but they allow you to do competitor research so you can see how other websites are ranking as well. So they also put out content about the biggest movers, which industries may have gone up or down. So it's not just the tool; they actually give you some analysis and insight that they have a larger scale than we can do, on a personal level, or some of these analysts can do. They have way more access to data. And like this is an example of, I'll just blow this up a little bit. This is one from Search. This is from Systrix. So they have a couple of examples in their blog post, which is at the bottom there. It's really a decent read. I give you examples of their visibility index and how they've noticed that certain websites have gone down during one broker update, then back up again, and they give you a really good overview of who's won, who's lost, which industries have won, which industries have lost. So if you're curious, like if your website has dropped, is it because your niche or industry has dropped as well? Systrix's content and as well as Searchmetrics are really good for checking that out. So probably the biggest thing, how can you check to see if your website has been hit? Andy, which are the first places you go when you want to know?
So the first places I'd usually go is the 2 places that I'd go jump immediately to: Google Search Console and for us, SE Ranking, the tool, whatever tool you're using, you may be using a different one to track your site's ranking. So those are the first 2 places I'd be looking at straight away to see if there's been any kind of drop or any kind of hit. Whatever rank tracking tool you're using, check your ranking, see what's happened. If you see a big drop, it kind of stands out, screams for itself. One thing to keep in mind, though, what I always say is don't panic, because it's so common. We see it with a lot of our clients. It's so common. People they see a drop and they immediately jump into panic stations, especially with broad core algorithm updates. Sit tight. I know it's hard to do. Sit tight for a couple of days, because often it fluctuates quite a lot for a few days. So many times I've seen sites drop suddenly as soon as it's hit and then come back within a few days, a week. Similar if you just see a drop if there's no broad core algorithm update. You just see a drop. It happens from time to time. I've seen it plenty of times where it's just been a single day. It just so happens whatever rank tracking tool you use has fluctuated on that day. Maybe it didn't record properly on that day and it recorded it and then it went back. Often Google's just trying new things and it adjusts the search results a bit, and you'll drop and then you come straight back. So don't panic immediately and don't jump straight in immediately. If it's ranking related, give it a couple of days and wait until you see it in your traffic as well. So always check your traffic that's coming through to your site. You can use Google Analytics. You can use Google Search Console, as they're showing us some graphs there on the screen where we're seeing Google Analytics at the top with users and Search Console at the bottom with clicks coming through. Check against those, see what's happening, because if your rankings dropped but your traffic hasn't, well, you're probably tracking the wrong keywords then, and you need to re-look at the keywords. Because if you've lost loads of rankings but not traffic, then those keywords that you've lost rankings on weren't providing you traffic. So maybe you need to rethink your keyword strategy if that's the case. Similar applies with conversions as well. Keep an eye on your conversions, although conversions usually a bit of a knock-on effect, comes a bit later than the drop in other areas. If you lose traffic but don't lose conversions, well, those keywords weren't getting you sales ultimately. So maybe they're the wrong keywords to be going after. Or similar, if you lose rankings but your conversions remain flat, or those keywords weren't getting you sales. So maybe you don't want to be wasting your time on them, and you need to reevaluate your keyword positions.
That's a really solid point. And I agree with your point that it's great to have a look from multiple angles and don't just trust one tool. Look at analytics, look at Search Console, look at rank trackers, look at anything that gives you a wider perspective on your website's ranking. And another tool that I love to use is called Penguin tool. It's by another digital marketing agency. I absolutely love it. Basically, it will match up your website across any bigger or more broadly spoken about algorithm updates. So in here, it will tell you about is it Panda or Penguin, which is some like really, really older algorithm updates, which are now like real time, but the time when they dropped in, I think it was 2011, 2012, some of this had a huge impact, but now like they happen all the time. It's a real time thing. This is great. So on here, you can see this website, they had a drop around where 2 updates have come. So that gray line and the green line, even maybe that yellow line as well has seen a bit of a drop too. That's a fantastic tool to use. I highly recommend doing that as well. And as Andy mentioned, go wider, like use the tools you have available to you. So we have access to SEMrush, which is one of the best SEO suites for not just SEO, but like digital marketing suites where you can do SEO research, you can do competitor research, you can do PPC research, you can do all that kind of stuff, as well as SE ranking as well. You can just take a zoomed out look at how your website looks. In this case, Smashing Magazine was one of the websites that was impacted by this June Broadcore update, and you can see from that week beginning June 2nd, June 3rd, they've just had a drop of visibility in the US, and it's not been a good couple of weeks, and I'm sure they're kind of at panic stations. So yeah, if you actually want to try SEMrush, you can go to Thank You Ninja. So there's that link at the bottom there. You can try SEMrush for free for I think it's 30 days. And I also have a link for SE ranking, which will come up later in the video as well. A video live stream. Well, if you're watching this after we finished, so this video will be available later, it will be a video. Cool. So what do you need to do first? So you've identified that you have lost ranking, your organic traffic might have gone down, your clicks in Search Console have gone down, your rank tracker, all those kind of places are telling you you've lost something. You've been impacted by this algorithm update. What are the first kind of things that you can do, Andy?
Okay, so at this point, once you've determined, yes, I've definitely lost ranking, and yes, I need to do something about it because it's affecting my traffic, my sales from my business, this is the point where you need to start digging into things and starting ticking off things off your list to try and determine, okay, why? So this is the part where you start getting into the meat of it, the why as it happened. So there's lots of different things you need to look for. The first thing I'd always look for, make sure your site's still in the index, but make sure you still got as many index pages as you should have as you're expecting. So as you can see here, so Dale showing you using the site search modifier, so site : and then put your site name in, and then put your URL for your homepage, and Google will do a search just for that website, and it will tell you how many results it's got. So you can see here, bbc.co.uk, massive site, 14.2 million results. I've no idea if that's normal for the BBC or not. I couldn't imagine it. Very well could be. Absolutely massive site. But just have a sense check on that. Are you expecting? Is the results about what you'd be expecting? So if you've got a larger ecom, you've got a few thousand pages, and it comes up with it found 30, you've got a problem there. So that helps you start to narrow down where the actual issue is. So the first step, just make sure you're still in the index. That's the basic. If you're not in the index, you can't rank, you can't get traffic.
Absolutely. I must say, being like head of SEO for the BBC must be a phenomenal, like really interesting challenge, trying to manage like 14 million pages if that is the case. Must be quite fun, as well as nerve-wracking as well. I guess the next thing we can do is check that the website's crawlable. So I've included there a screenshot. I'll just kind of make it a bit bigger. So basically, when Google crawls your website, it uses something called like a user agent, which is basically it mimics the browser and basically wants to see your website in the same way that a user would, or a person would, like you or I. And it's quite clever. It basically means that it makes sure that it sees things exactly as the way that you or I should see it. And then in here, I've got like 2 different types of Google bots. So we've got desktop at the top, which is the oldest version, and then Googlebot smartphone. So if you're not familiar, Google uses these 2 different robots to crawl the web, but has predominantly switched to the smartphone one so that it determines ranking based on how your website performs on a mobile level, because so much of internet traffic today is mobile people like yourself or I, yourself and I, on a smartphone, looking at the web on our sofa whilst we're watching Bake Off or whatever. So they want to make sure that the websites that they rank at the top of Google function well on a smartphone.
I think it's an important distinction to make as well, that it doesn't matter if your website's getting most of its traffic from desktop. Lots of sites will, especially be business-to-business type sites. Most people searching for business-to-business type things, they're not doing it on their phone. They're doing it while they're at work on an actual computer. Doesn't matter to Google. The majority of web traffic is on mobile, so it's ranking mobile content and using the mobile crawler to crawl the website. It's not going to make an exception for your website just because you happen to get more desktop traffic. It's still going to be using the smartphone crawler to look at your site.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, our own website, I think it's 75% of all the traffic that we get is on a desktop device, but Google ranks us or indexes us based on mobile. So our mobile performance has to be tip top so that we get those desktop rankings, at the top of Google for that as well. So this comes into the crawlability. So robots.txt is a file that every website should have. If you're not familiar with this, it's not unexpected. It's because it's a very fiddly bit that normally is like automatically done by tools or your developer, but it's really important that you do check how it has been set up. Andy, perhaps you've got a bit more info on what the robots.txt file is.
So your robots.txt file is essentially it's instructions for Google. So the first thing Google will do when it lands on your site will look for the robots.txt file. And when it finds it, it will read it, and it contains instructions that tell Google how to crawl your website. So you can see there we've got, that's quite a simplified one there. User agent at the top, the stars wildcard. So it's just saying, so you're just defining all user agents that applies to. We're disallowing anything in the WP admin, so the WordPress admin folder. We're telling it, don't touch that content. Don't go and crawl that, apart from, as you can see, the one underneath, it says allow, which is a specific file in the WordPress admin folder that is allowed. And then we're giving them a link to the sitemap so it can help Google find the sitemap. So that's quite straightforward. On most website, robots.txt are going to look similar to this. You don't need to go really crazy with it and have loads of instructions. So you don't need to go too nuts with it. But that's what a basic one looks like. That's what most ones look like. And that's what Google's going to read. The first thing it's going to do on your website is read that file to understand how it should crawl your website. And it's another important point. The file, in order for Google to find it, has to be in a specific place. You can't put it wherever you want on your website. It's got to be in one place, and it's the same for every website. And that's got to be in the root domain. So it's always got to be found at your domain name / robots.txt. If it's not there, Google's not going to read it. Even if it finds it through crawling, if it's somewhere else, it's going to ignore it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are... robots.txt file can be really complicated and be quite dangerous for your ranking as well, because you could do something accidentally, like telling Google to ignore your website in this simple text document. You can tell them, oh, no, ignore it. For example, one common thing we see is with websites that are being redeveloped is that the developer will put that on a separate server and put a robots.txt file which says, do not crawl this website, do not index it, don't even look at this website. The problem sometimes that we've seen in the past is that website is then pushed live, published with a new design, but the robots.txt file hasn't been updated, and then you see Google thinks, oh, this website doesn't want to be indexed anymore, so I'm not going to index it anymore. So it's a very simple document, but can be very complicated and very dangerous for your rankings. So do take care with it. If you need some advice, you know where to find us. If you don't, we'll give you some contact details at the end there. Yeah, sorry, Andy.
I was going to say, so because it is an instruction file for robots, it needs to be perfect. It can be if you mistype something, you can cause all kinds of problems with it. Because it is for a robot, it will do exactly what is being told. So, for example, if you mistype something and put disallow / well, you've just blocked your entire website from being crawled, and that's going to cause no end of problems. So yeah, be careful with it. If you are editing your robots.txt file, make sure you know what you're doing, or engage a professional, because one simple mistake can, block half your website from being seen by Google, and then you're going to have real problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good blog post about this is by a friend of mine over at Content King. It's really in depth, and it gives you some perspectives from a couple of different SEO consultants, as well as the Content King team as well. If you want to educate yourself about how it works, do take a look at that. It's probably one of the best places to do so. But if you do need some advice on how to make sure that, if you want something just to double check that your robots.txt file has been set up properly, do get in contact with us, and I'll give you the contact details at the end there. Whilst I'm thinking about it, if you do want to get a copy of how to get to the top of Google, you can get one today by using the hashtag ask. By asking us a question, we're going to do a quick Q&A at the end there. Just use the hashtag ask along with your question, and I will just use a generator to automatically pick somebody at the end there. Also, if you're learning something so far today, do make sure that you do click like underneath this video, whether you're watching us today on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter as well. We're everywhere. That'd be really appreciated. And if you are watching us on YouTube and this is your first time here, hit subscribe down below, somewhere down here. And if you're already subscribed, why don't you help us even more by sharing this video with somebody who should see it? That would be fantastic. Really appreciate it. Cool. Taking you back to our recommendations, we were talking about the robots.txt file and being findable. Another thing to cover is indexability. So we're going to go to that in a second, but a good way to check if your website is able to be crawled or indexable is to use a crawler tool. So you basically use a tool that does exactly the same thing that Google does with their Google bot. You crawl a website and check, are my important pages indexable? And Screaming Frog is probably one of the best tools you can use for doing that. You can get a copy for free going to the website. The link is underneath there, and you can crawl up to 500 pages. But the cost of it is super cheap. That I would recommend just buying it anyway or using it regularly to analyze your website. Not that there aren't other tools that will help you to do that as well. How are your feelings on Screaming Frog, Andy?
Yeah, Screaming Frog's one of my favorite tools. It's absolutely a great tool. I can't think of a single SEO I've ever known who doesn't like it. So it's absolutely amazing. Like you say, it's really cheap. It's £150 annually for a license for it. Really cheap. Or there's the free version if you've got a small website, and that'll work just as well. It's built to emulate Google. So it does what Google does on your website and then tells you everything that it's found and is looking at, which is super useful for SEO.
Yeah, totally. So do just go to the link beneath there and you can download a copy and do it for free. So another thing which I'm just going to cover briefly is blocking US IPs. So Googlebot, Google run out of California, so their computers do crawling from there. And I have seen in the past, I don't think it's as common as anymore, because they have servers around the world. They have Googlebot running from Europe and so on. But I have seen in the past the website have problems with getting indexed because they're blocking US IP addresses. So they were blocking people from visiting from the US, which is also Googlebot as well. So they were blocking Googlebot from going to their website, which means that Google wasn't able to index them at all. So yeah, this could be a bit technical. If you're not sure how IP blocking works, speak to your developer. I'm sure they will do a quick check to do that. It's just to get a free VPN, and you can just pretend you're in the US and visit your website and see if it works. But the best thing to do is just ask a developer to check and just have a look at this verifying Google document. It's quite handy. So the next piece is about accidental no index and no follow tags. Andy, what are no index and no follow tags?
Okay, so no index and no follow are meta tags. So they sit in the data on your pages, on your website. Users don't see them, but they tell Google, they provide some information to Google about the page. So in this case, no index is telling Google not to include that page in their index. So what that means if the page has a no index tag on it, it's not going to appear in search results. Google may override it. They occasionally do, but it's quite rare. I wouldn't bank on that. Generally, if it's got a no index tag on it, it's not going to be in search results. No follows are in a similar vein, but it's telling Google not to follow any links on that page. So as most people know, Google crawls the web. It has its little spiders that go and crawl the web. They land on a page, they look at the page, they find the links on the page, and then they follow those links to find other pages, and it perpetuates like that. With a no follow tag, you can either set it against a specific link or at page level. It tells Google not to follow either that link or any links on the page if it's set at page level. So if you've got a no index and no follow tag on that page, Google's not going to put that page in the search results, and it's not going to follow any links on that page. There might be reasons why you want to no index a page, so you don't want it in search results. Essentially, if it's any page that you don't want users entering your site on, then it should be no index. So, thank you for your purchase pages. You don't want to use a landing on your thank you page before they've been through your sales funnel or your conversion funnel. It may be, basket pages, like checkout pages, things like that. They're commonly, you'd want to no index them because you don't want users landing on them. But if you've got, a product page or a content page, you definitely want that in the index. So it's important to keep an eye on those no index tags. Make sure you're not accidentally no indexing pages that you want to be in the index.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if you were an e-commerce store and your big money category pages are, like Air Jordans in the UK or something like that, and you accidentally stuck a no index tag on that, and that's normally where you would earn like 10,000 a month plus revenue for your site, and suddenly, I accidentally put a no index tag, by revenue for that month.
Yeah, we had I know a campaign a while back that I worked on where they made some changes on their website and accidentally put a no index tag on the website as a whole, and it was just overnight traffic zero, just gone. All their organic traffic just gone overnight. So it can have a huge impact. Obviously, that's quite an extreme case, no indexing the entire site, but it does come up reasonably regularly. Somebody's just accidentally pressed the wrong thing, they've ticked the wrong box, and they've just put a no index tag on a page that they shouldn't, or even forgot to take one off after they've made a change to a page. Maybe they were working on a change, so they had the working version set as no index. While they're working on it, they pushed it live and forgot to take the no index tag off and put it back in the index.
Yeah, it's surprisingly common even for like bigger companies, or these errors kind of happen. It's human nature, but it's another reason why it's really important that you're following checklists when you do anything when it comes to your SEO or website development, that you are making sure you're doing things properly. Like Andy, our SEO team, I know they have checklists and processes for everything to make sure that we do everything cleanly. For example, we have a HTTPS checklist. In fact, I can move on to that now, talking about HTTPS. There's a HTTPS checklist that they go through when they're doing these like important but very serious changes to websites.
Yeah, so HTTP and HTTPS, it can seem like a minor thing. After all, it's only one letter in the URL, but it makes a huge difference. So literally the difference between secure and unsecure. Google doesn't like unsecure sites. Especially, it does not like unsecure sites that have any type of personal data on them. So any type of login system on your site, it's got to be secure. Otherwise, you're not going to rank. Even if you don't, Google doesn't particularly like unsecure sites. It favors secure sites. But how they're managed is important as well. So every website, at least every website that is secure, has an SSL certificate, exists in 4 possible states. All of them do. You've got your HTTP www. HTTPS and HTTPS www. As we can see there. If they're not managed,
I wish I made that a bit bigger, actually.
if they're not managed properly, you've essentially got 4 versions of your website live. Competing against each other, which gets very confusing for Google about which one it should be ranking. And worst case, if Google's confused, it might choose just not to rank any. So it will definitely affect your rankings. And worst case, they'll just drop the whole lot because they won't know which one to rank. So the important part here is, as you can see in there, the status codes, making sure you pick one, make sure it's a secure one. Doesn't matter whether it's www or not, as long as you're consistent across the entire site, but just pick one as one of the secure ones and redirect the others to that one. Set up a rule on your site to force the redirect. So if anyone ever lands on a page that's one of the other versions, it just automatically moves them over to the one that you've determined should remain live.
Yeah. I mean, if you imagine you've got 4 different, it's almost like 4 different websites. Like, let's just imagine that you had each of those and none of them are redirecting. Each one's available. You've got 4 different websites, each with 1,000 pages each. you've got 4,000 pages for Google to then crawl through and decide, which one's important. I've absolutely no idea. I'll send people to the secure one or not secure one, and then you've got the further complication of, let's say you've got the unsecure version of a checkout page, and people are going through there, and their credit card details, debit card details are all not secured behind that SSL certificate, that HTTPS. So it's very important that you do have those redirects in place. Again, it can be a little bit technical, and that's why you should definitely consult an SEO team like our own, or your website developer. Definitely side with going with the SEO consultant, SEO specialist over the web developer, and make sure those two are actually talking together and making sure that it's done properly. But yeah, very important that is done, adding in those redirects as well. Another thing is another thing that can cause ranking drops, incorrect canonical tags. So Andy, what's a canonical tag?
Okay, so a canonical tag is it's another type of meta tag that exists in your page data, and it explains to Google the relationship between two pages that are very similar or essentially the same pages. So the canonical tag, you point the canonical tag at another page, and what that's telling Google is you're aware that these pages are essentially the same, and you're telling Google which one you want to rank through the canonical tag. Clear as mud. So what is commonly used for? What you'll see, the most common usage is e-commerce, where you've maybe got, say, 4 different versions of a product in different colors, and they each have their own page. Because they're all basically identical, the only difference is the colors, it can start looking a bit like duplicate content that you want to manage. So you'd pick your best one, whichever one sells the best, has the most interest in it, and you'd add canonical tags to the other 4, pointing to the best one. So that tells Google, when it looks at any one of those other pages, the canonical tag tells Google, hey, yes, we know these pages are very similar. This is the page we want in the search results.
Yeah, it definitely helps with, as you said there, the problem of possible soft duplicate content. And say you do have a pair of Air Jordans available on whichever variant, there's like 1,000 now, on your website, and you've got a blue pair, red pair, green pair, black pair, white pair, grey pair. You might decide that instead of trying to rank all those pages, it's safer just to rank one of them, like the black pair might be the most popular, and point every other page towards it, rather than trying to rank with multiple pages, which Google isn't a fan of people doing anyway. It's not going to show more than 2 URLs from the same domain for a search result anyway, because of the restrictions they have in place. It's better just to pick one and put hedge your bets with that instead. Yeah,
it helps consolidate your ranking signals between pages. So if you've got all these different versions of pages, you probably have inlinks coming, backlinks from external sites coming to all those different pages. They've all each got their own ranking signals that are helping them ranking, but it's spread out across multiple pages. By using the canonicals, you can keep those pages live, so they're still available to users if they need them, but pass those some of the benefits of those ranking signals and consolidate it all in one place. Before anybody gets any ideas of, hey, I can use this and just push everything into one page, and they've got to be similar. So it's a specific instruction that you're providing to Google to say these serve the same purpose. These pages serve the same purpose for a user. So don't think, we can use that. I'll canonicalize everything to one page, and I'll put all the ranking signals, and that'll just top Google for everything. It doesn't work like that.
Unfortunately, no.
But unfortunately, it doesn't. It can only be used where the pages serve the same purpose for the user. So it's.
It brings me on to another tag, which is very similar. So another reason that rankings can drop is because of incorrect hreflang implementation. So Andy, what's a hreflang?
So these tags, they were the same as canonical tags, but they're for different language versions. So, or different country versions of pages. You might have pages that are targeted at different countries or different languages. hreflang tags, you can use them to define the relationship between the pages for Google. So it can understand, so for example, let's say you've got your homepage and then you've got a German version, a Spanish version, and a French version that aimed at people in those countries. You'd set your hreflang tags up, so on each page, it references all the others and tells Google, yes, this is the English version, that page over there is the French version, and the page you should rank for French people searching in French. That's the German version, and the pages should rank for anybody in Germany who's searching in German. That's the Spanish version, and so on.
Yeah, they're pretty useful tags to have, but also can be like quite complicated as well. So there are some like I typically see that there is some automation done with like some websites will just use a plugin or something like that to make that happen. But because of the automation, the fact that it is quite technical, this is where this incorrect information can happen, and you have the wrong websites trying to rank. You have like a US website trying to rank in every country where really you want your other pages to rank instead. So having them incorrectly done is a real problem.
It can get quite complicated if you're using both hreflang tags and canonical tags as well to interact with each other. So it can start if you're using both, which many multi-language sites will be, it can start getting really complicated really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one, like you can use tools to check this out. There's this tool at technicalseo.com/tools/hreflang. You can check individual URLs, or you can use Screaming Frog again. Another reason why it's such a great tool is you can check multiple hreflangs, multiple pages all in one go. Again, if you're unsure, do speak to your SEO consultant or just get in touch with us, and we'll happily take a look and see what we can do. To just double check how your hreflangs are looking. Another important thing, another reason why sometimes websites drop in the ranking is mobile friendliness, which we talked about with the Google bot with crawling earlier. Andy, why is mobile friendliness important?
Yeah, so as we spoke earlier, Google's crawling your site using a mobile bot. It's looking at the mobile version of your site. You can have the best desktop site in the world, but if your mobile version is terrible, you're not going to rank well because Google's looking at the mobile version. So it's really important to make sure your site's mobile friendly and it's performing well on mobile, because that's what ultimately Google's judging you by.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is another reason your ranking can drop is because of crawl errors. So, Andy, what are they?
Yeah, so you can get these in Google Search Console, which is a free tool. If you're not already signed up on it for your website, you should be. So get yourself on there, get yourself signed up. It's a free tool provided by Google, and it gives you information of how Google sees your site in search, which is really handy for if you're trying to rank it in search. So crawl errors, you can see here, you'll have a table if you go into the right section of Search Console where it will list errors, number of valid pages, excluded pages, maybe pages with warnings. You can see the 0 there in this particular case, but some sites will. It will tell you below there, so there's 5 errors. There's lots of different categories of errors, so it will break it down for you in the table. Essentially, this is Google's telling you there's a problem with it being able to crawl those pages, whatever reason it may be. Maybe it's a 404 error, maybe something's not loading properly on it, whatever it may be. There's lots of different ones, and it will tell you about them. It's telling you it can't crawl that page properly, which if it can't crawl the page properly, it can't rank the page properly, so you're losing out there.
Yeah, it's also good because sometimes it will just tell you ahead of time that they have a crawling problem and that it's going to result in that page dropping out in the index sometimes soon. Like, we had a problem with this, we found a no index tag and we classify that as an error. So watch out, in a couple of days, you're ranking, that page is going to disappear out of the index entirely. Another good way of checking if you have crawl errors or not, or basically something you really need to be on top of is how healthy your website is. And there are multiple tools you can use to do that. Screaming Frog, very powerful tool, but also you have tools built into like rank trackers, stuff like this. SE ranking is the SEO suite that we use at the moment, and they have a really strong auditor as well. And you can see in here, like, the website that's been crawled has got 41% out of 100 for their health. A caveat to that is, like, don't take that as like gospel. Take it with a pinch of salt. That it's just a score that a tool has told you. You need that human element to assess whether that's accurate or not, whether some of those things that it's flagged as like errors or issues might actually be intentional, that it might be because of a choice made on tag usage and no follow tag usage, stuff like that. But it's a good indicator, at least, of how healthy your website is. Andy, what kind of things is a tool like SE ranking? What are they looking for?
So it looks for a lot of essentially yes/no SEO checks. So things like, is your meta too long? Is the page 404? Is the redirect part of a chain? So it goes redirect, lands on page. things like that. So it looks for general yes/no checks, and these tools are really great, and they're really helpful if you're not an SEO professional yourself, because it gives the information to you. It spits out a list that says this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, so you can then just go ahead and address it. As you touched on earlier, Dale, though, I always like to use these alongside a tool like Screaming Frog, because I don't give you the nuance. So for example, if your page is redirected, as long as the redirect is technically set up correct, tools like this won't report it. It'll just assume it's right. Whereas you might not want that redirect there at all, which is where tools like Screaming Frog become really valuable, because that gives you all the data and will tell you that page is redirected, so you can pick that up and address it. But these tools specifically, they're incredibly useful if you're not an SEO professional, because, like I say, it will spit out a list of this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. So it just gives you an itemized list that you can just work through, essentially, and just push that site health up.
Yeah, absolutely. Another good tool as well as Screaming Frog is Sitebulb, a very powerful tool. And again, it's really handy if you know what you're looking for. So if you're a business owner or marketing manager and SEO is not your it's not your forte, a tool like SE Ranking, their auditors are good, like indicators or traffic light system of this is good, this is bad, this is what your focus should be, and then you can use Screaming Frog or speak to our team or your own SEO consultant and see what those the deeper problems are with Screaming Frog or Sitebulb or something like that. And one of the more drastic reasons that a website might drop out of the ranking suddenly at any point in time or during a broker update might be a manual action. Andy, what's a manual action?
So these are quite rare, thankfully. I've only seen 2 in my career as an SEO. But a manual action means that Google has manually taken action against your website. Never a position you want to be in. So that means somebody at Google has looked at your website and decided, this is bad, we need to take this out of search results. And you've been manually removed. Well, as it says there, you may have been heavily penalized and dropped down the search results. For all intents and purposes, I've only seen 2, but I've never even heard of one where it's been penalized. It's always been removed. And basically, you've broken one of Google's rules, what Google consider you need to do to be included in their index. So they've just removed you from it. One of the benefits of the manual actions, while they are quite scary and obviously
benefits, terrifying,
is benefits probably the wrong word there. But one of the helpful things about it is they tell you exactly why they've done it. So you'll have a message in your Google Search Console. They'll also send an email to the webmaster if they know of the site. It'd generally be whatever email account owns the Google Search Console account, and in that they will tell you exactly what they have found that is a problem for them, so you can take action for it against it. And they are pretty responsive as well, so once you've taken action you can respond to them and tell them fixed it, and they'll go on, check your site, and if they agree with you that you fixed it, they'll remove it and you'll go back. But obviously it can be really scary if you ever get hit with one, because it can be a case of your site just disappears. Sometimes it might be a page, but often it's the entire site will just be gone from search results. And you'll just have this message saying you've been a naughty boy. And it can be really scary to see that. But if you don't panic, look at the message, it will tell you exactly what the problem is, so you can respond to that and get it dealt with. And at least with them telling you exactly what the problem is, you can be a bit quicker in how you respond. You don't have to spend time digging through trying to work it out. You can just respond to it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, as you say, that's the benefit, I guess you can call it, that at least you're given a list of things that could be wrong, and it's not like you guessing or having to do like hours and hours of analysis of like, what does this broad core update mean? Is it my links? Is it my content? Is it, what is it? At least you know that it's because you got spam or unnatural links or whatever, any of these reasons that are listed in Google's documentation. So you can find a link at the bottom there if you want to double check what they are, spam, all that kind of stuff. I do want to move on. We're quite far into our time now. There's still a couple of things I'd like to cover. So just like lost backlinks. So another big reason that a website might drop in the dropping the rankings at any point in time, especially around like broker updates, is because you lost some of your valuable backlinks. So a tool like SE Ranking or Majestic, any of those tools, SEMrush 2 will record any new or lost backlinks that they find. So they're constantly crawling the web in exactly the same way that Google does, just not on the same scale, of course, because Google is a enormous company with loads of servers that can do all the time. But it's a good indication of where you might have lost backlinks. So if you've had like good press in the past, you had like a mention on the Guardian or an industry relevant publisher, if those have disappeared, that can lead to a drop in ranking as well. So you need to double check, have you lost those? And as I say, SE Ranking has a tool for that. You can just check it out, see how many you've lost over a period of time. It's normal to just lose backlinks. They happen. Websites get updated, websites change, links break. It's common, but that's all the more reason to keep an eye on it and see, can I add that link back in? Message the publisher, can you add that? Do you mind updating that link? And so on. And with SE Ranking, which you can try for free using the link at the bottom there, go to bestninjatool.com. It'll tell you which page the link was lost from, the anchor text that was used, how strong that website was. So you've got like scores in here like DTPT, which are basically an evaluation of the quality of the website, quality of the URL, and so on. So a couple of minutes left, and I did want to squeeze in a Q&A at the end here. So what to do next? Content matching, search intent. So Andy, what is search intent, and why should we care about it?
Yeah, so Google search intent is vital for ranking anything, because Google doesn't work on keyword matching. It hasn't for a long time. Used to, way back when, years ago, but it hasn't for a long time. What Google does is, Google's intelligent. The algorithm's intelligent. It works out based on what the search term is, what that user is trying to achieve, and then it matches. It returns pages in the search results that match the intent. So what is that user trying to achieve? That page meets that. So that's the page that's going to get served. Doesn't matter if the keywords match on it or not, although matching keywords is a pretty good signal that it does what they want, but it doesn't necessarily. I've seen plenty of pages ranked for search terms where those keywords don't appear anywhere on the page because they serve the intent. They are providing what the user is trying to achieve. They are answering that, so then they will rank. So that's what your search intent is. So what you've got to consider for yourself is, what purpose do your pages serve for your users? Are they buying something? Are they providing a service for them? Are they providing information? And how do you best serve that purpose with those pages? And if you can do that and you can serve that purpose really well, people that are looking for that purpose, regardless of what variation of keywords they type into Google, you're probably going to rank quite well for them.
Yeah, and I just read about a new algorithm change, or like a change to the machine learning kind of side of the algorithm, which is I believe is like going to gradually roll out over the next year or so. Is, I think it's called MUM, like MUM, and it's basically they're going to be able to return content from a different language if they believe that it's a better answer to your query. So you might search for something in English, it might determine that the best answer for that, according to them, is in Arabic, and it will translate that page and deliver it to you so you can see it straight away, rather than only serving pages in English just because that's the language you're searching, which is absolutely fascinating. But again, comes back to Google is the algorithm is smart, so all the more reason that your content has to be smart and match exactly what people are looking for. Like they have an intent, they know they have a problem. You've got to write what the solution is, and it's got to match that problem in the best way possible. And that comes down to like the next point of, if you have had a ranking drop, you got to go back and improve the content that was performing previously. Again, with broker updates, you might see the algorithm has penalized you, impacted your website right now, but might restore it at the next broad core update, which is something we'll get to in just a second. The best thing you could do is just improve your content straight away. Just go in there, compare against the content that Google is ranking, and say, what is it about that content that's doing well that my website, my page or blog post isn't doing? What can I do to improve it? Do I need to add more depth, or the reverse? Do I need to shrink it down? Is it too long? Am I just writing for the sake of writing? Could I be more concise? Could I add more multimedia to it? Could I add a video which will help that piece perform, be more insightful or actionable to people? Look at it from every angle, especially when it comes to like competing. Look at what's already doing well in the search results, and backlinks as well. Like, you might have lost backlinks, or your backlinks might not have gone anywhere. It's just they weren't strong enough. So you need to earn new backlinks, and a good tool for checking how your new backlinks are progressing is to use SE ranking again, or SEMrush, whichever. Majestic as well is a historically well used tool within the SEO community. Big fan of too. Keep an eye on that, but also use that to check the new backlinks of your competitors. Check the new backlinks for the pages that are now ranking top of Google as well. Like, use it in every way possible to see which strong backlinks are being created, which you can jump on as well, but also use them for inspiration for new backlinks from new websites that aren't in the mix already, because there's no point going and creating backlinks for the same websites. You're just leveling the playing field. What you need to do is jump ahead of them. And then finally, the final point about like how to restore your ranking is just to be patient. So, Andy, you've seen broadcore updates several times, and you were saying at the very beginning, sometimes you just got to wait for the next broadcore update to come along and put things right again.
Yeah, there's no magic buttons. There's no silver bullets in SEO. There's nothing you can do SEO wise that will just boom, click, and your traffic suddenly triples next day. It takes time, and unfortunately, we're at the mercy of Google. You've got to wait for Google to recrawl your site. You've got to wait for Google to update and reevaluate your site and reindex it, and all these things take time. And yes, sometimes it can take a while depending on your site. There are a few little things you can do to help speed it up, like if you make regular updates to your site, Google will look at your site more regularly because it will try and make sure it's finding those. You can request manual crawls through Search Console. You're limited on how many you can do of them, so don't think you can go in and request every page all the time. It's about 10 a day, I think you can do most. But you can request one. So if you've made a big, especially if from some of the things we mentioned earlier, if you pick up a big error on your website, you fix it, you can go and request Google recrawl that, and if it picks up the fix, chances are it will bump you back up a bit. But in general, across your website as a whole, it's going to take time, and you're just going to have to build it. I know it's unfortunate. Everybody wants to have that magic button that they can push, and it'll just suddenly triple their traffic. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist. You've just got to continually iterate, improve your website, improve your content, just continual improvements, and you'll continue to gain the benefits of it over time, and it'll build and build and build.
Absolutely. I mean, this broadcore update was the first one since December. They normally come like every 3 to 6 months, and we've seen that some websites that were impacted in December have now seen a revision, and they've gone back to their previous ranking from December, or they've reclaimed some of the ranking. They've still got work to do. It might be that the second half of the broadcore algorithm update for June is coming in July. It might be that we see some revisions there, but again, whilst you're being patient, you should also see what you can do, what levers you can push to kind of give yourself the best opportunity to get those restored rankings as well. But another thing you can do is to request a marketing review. We do a free marketing review. If you go to exposureninja.com/review, leave your details. We'll review your website, have a look at your ranking, your traffic, and we'll make recommendations on how you can improve all of that, as well as how you can improve your leads and conversions as well. So if you're trying to increase your leads or sales, we'll show you in that 15-minute video exactly how we think you can do that best. So we are over, I think we're over time now. We're already a couple of minutes over. Andy, do you still have time to do a couple of questions? I've
got about 5-10 minutes, but pre-warning, my son will be coming home from school.
Okay. That's cool. If you just drop out, no problem. I can field a few more questions. My daughter's going to wake up soon as well. So cool. If you have a question, just use the hashtag ask, and I'll be giving away a copy of How to Get to the Top of Google at the end of it. So I'll just pick one lucky person. But let's just go back and see if I can find any questions.
I think I saw a question about what to do if Google's crawled your site but doesn't rank it.
Right. Okay.
I think that falls it falls into, it's very similar to what we've just been through. First thing I'd do is check the technical issues. Just make sure there's nothing preventing Google from ranking your site. As I mentioned, if you're not on Search Console, get yourself into Search Console for your website and check what that's telling you. See if it's throwing up errors, telling you something's blocking Google from ranking your site. If there's nothing blocking Google from actually ranking your site and it's crawled your site and seen it, fortunately quite harsh, but that means that Google's decided your site isn't worth ranking. So you need to go back and look at your content and what's actually on your site. Is it valuable to people? Is it a benefit for users? Is it adding something for those users? And relook at your content, and you probably would then need to start looking at rewriting and redoing your content, making sure it's adding value to users, because that's ultimately what Google's looking for. It's going to rank the things that add the most value to the users depending on what they're searching for. So make sure your content and your site's adding that value to those users, whatever that value may be, whatever niche you're in. Make sure it's adding it, it's useful for them, and then you'll start picking up those rankings as long as there's no technical problems.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that there are like thousands of ranking signals at this point. You could have the best content possible. If you're not making it findable, like easy for Google to discover, then it's not going to rank either. So make sure that you have not only like links internally to that new content as well. So you might hit publish, but if you've not added some new links to it, how will anybody find it? The same with Google, they won't find it either. Backlinks too. You've got to have those external votes of confidence from other websites that your content is worthwhile and is the best out there. You need to have those there too. There's a question here about suggestions on a free measurement tool. So I guess that's a free ranking tool. I would just search free keyword ranking tool. There are a few that I've used previously that I know are okay, but with anything that's free, you get what you pay for. So it's going to be very limited. It's going to be a daily rank check maybe. The best thing to do, I would suggest, is to try SE ranking for free using our link. So if you go to bestninjatools.com, you'll be able to try SE ranking for a month. And after that point, it's actually really cheap. It's like a very, very reasonable tool. But give it a try for 30 days. Sorry. I think it's 28 days. I can't quite remember. Sorry. And see if it matches your requirements for rank tracking. Another question here. So is there a recommended amount of time sitemap should be submitted to Google? Times, I normally just add it once.
Give them the URL and leave them to it. They'll access it when they need to access it. Make sure your sitemap's updated every time you make a change to your website, but give Google the URL and then you're done. You don't need to do it again.
No.
Yeah,
that's another thing. Like with your ranking, like Google knows. Google will look at the sitemap and will pick up on the signals in there, like how often they should crawl a page. So they might see a static page and say, you're not like a news publisher, so I don't need to check that page every day. So they might not check your homepage or some of your key pages, your category pages, once a month, maybe once every couple of months. I've seen pages in our access logs for our own website, pages like they haven't been crawled for like months and months and months, sometimes once a year, because they know Google can determine from the sitemap or also like other signals that it's just not updated very frequently, so it doesn't need to. If you make a change, you add stuff to your sitemap, Google will typically pick up on that anyway by crawling your website, but you can use Search Console to just put, as Andy mentioned earlier, you can push Google to go and crawl that immediately by just submitting the URL on its own. Let's have a look, see if there are any more questions before your son gets home and my daughter wakes up. Don't forget, if you do have a question, now is the best time to ask. Do you have a good example of Screaming Frog result? Yeah, loads. If you go to any of our client websites, you crawl those, and it'll all look great. But they take time to crawl, and I can't do that right now on the stream, unfortunately. But yeah, Screaming Frog's great. I love Screaming Frog. What can be done if Google crawled yourself? Oh, we reached that as well. Any others? Will Google notify you of changes? So, and you picked up on this before with the manual actions, but with non-manual actions.
Yeah, manual actions, they will. Non-manual, if you just mean like ranking changes, no, they're not going to tell you. You need to pick up on that yourself. In terms of if you mean, will they have in the last a year or so, they've started notifying of Broadcore updates. It's usually the day before it happens, so you've pretty much got time to brace yourself, and that's about it. But if you follow the Search Liaison account on Twitter, that's owned by Google, and they use that to announce Broadcore updates. Like I say, normally you get a day. I think the biggest notice we've had for one is a week. They don't tell you what's changing or what they're doing with it. They just tell you it's going to happen. So it's worthwhile keeping an eye on that, because that can just give you a bit of a prompt to, okay, I need to pay a bit more attention to my rankings and what's happening for the next few days, just to see if anything changes. But that could be useful.
Right, I don't see any more questions coming up right this second. Okay, another one. So, what are 3 things to look for in a good Screaming Frog report? I think there's so many things. We're talking like hundreds of different things you can look at. Andy, any come to mind?
It depends what you're trying to, what you're using Screaming Frog to try and look at and try and achieve, because you can use it for so many different things. But if you, as a general website health metric, quite hard because there's so many things. As a general website health, I'd recommend using one of the tools that just spits out the report at the end and gives you a health score rather than Screaming Frog. But important top line things is indexability status of the page. I'm trying to there's so many things, I'm trying to wait up which ones.
Well, one for me is redirects. Like if you have like redirect chains. So for those who don't have a lot of SEO knowledge, basically if you have a redirect that goes like from one redirect to another redirect to another redirect, that's called a chain. And historically, although they say that's not the case anymore, but I don't believe them, they say that you don't lose any of your authority, your link authority through those. Let's say your link authority from a backlink was 100 out of 100. So for each redirect, it goes down by 10%. So the final, URL only gets like 70% of the authority from that backlink. I always check the redirect chains, redirects, and just kind of remove any of those, and just make sure the redirects are just like A to B or A to Z, immediately. There's nothing, there are no like redirects in between, no redirect chains. Another question here before we get off is, do you think Core Web Vitals will negatively impact rankings? Andy?
If they're bad. Yeah, I think they will. Just how much of an impact, we don't know, because it's new. It's only just started rolling out, and it's a slow rollout, so we don't know how big of an impact it's going to have. But certainly, if they're bad, yeah, otherwise Google wouldn't be bringing them in. For the last year, Google have been telling us we are going to determine these are going to be a ranking factor. So if they're bad, they're going to negatively impact your rankings. Google's basically told us.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine that you're Google and you want your website, your search engine users to have the best experience possible. You might go, okay, this website has the best answer and is super slow, so I'll give the user, the searcher, the best answer. But really, they want to give the best user experience, and the best user experience is the fastest website possible. Yeah. They're always going to go for best answer, but speed is the key.
Yeah, I think one thing to just keep in mind on Core Web Vitals is they're relative. So what I mean by that is, while Google breaks them down into good, needs improvement, bad, it depends on how you appear against the people you're competing against. 5-second load speed would be bad in Google's metrics, but if everybody else takes 6 seconds, you're winning. So while it's still not ideal, you're still winning. I mean, that's a bit of an extreme example. You're never going to have an example where everybody's taking longer than 6 seconds, but it's relative to where you are. You might have 2-second load speed, which Google considers good, but if everybody else is 1 second, you're at the bottom of the queue.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, I've put another question on the screen, which doesn't include the hashtag ask, so you're not going to have an opportunity to win this copy of How to Get to the Top of Google. But Screaming Frog shows no meta keywords. Is that bad?
Meta keywords are pointless. You can ignore it. It's a very old SEO thing. So meta keywords, you used to put them on your page, and it was basically you were telling Google, please rank me for these keywords. They do nothing and have done nothing for years. So if they're blank, it doesn't matter. In fact, if you've got them in there, I'd say go and take them out, because all you're doing by meta keywords is broadcasting to your competition what keywords you're targeting. So that they serve no purpose for SEO. Yeah. If they're blank, don't worry about it. You can ignore them.
Yeah, they don't need to be used, but I would certainly take them out if I got the time to do so, just because from a competitor's point of view, if I go into your website and I crawl it and I find all those meta keywords, I know exactly what your keyword strategy is. I know exactly which keywords you're trying to rank for, so that's very handy for me to know. I doubt any website really, any modern website has them, but if they are there, yeah, I'm going to crawl that information and use it to my advantage. So don't worry if it's empty. That's a good thing. Cool. So I'm going to make a draw now. I'm going to pick someone. I'm going to send a copy of How to Get to the Top of Google to. So we have these people coming up. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? This is slow. Natasha. Fantastic. Great. Well, congrats, Natasha. I'm going to get in contact with you. I'm going to send you a copy of How to Get to the Top of Google. Our best-selling book is still in the top 10 on Google. Can you believe it? After, how many years? 8 years, something like that. A long, long time. Great. Let's close that. It's back to us. And anything else you'd like to share with everyone before we go, Andy? I'm just going to share our contact details. So if anybody
I think we've covered everything. But yeah, as you mentioned earlier, Dale, if you're really struggling, you're unsure, free review. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And, the guys doing it are great. So if you're really struggling, you really don't know, send it off for a free review. Get some professionals to have a look at it and don't charge you a penny.
Absolutely. And our contact details there. If you want to reach out to us, you can. I'm available on Twitter, DaleDavies_me. Andy can be reached via office@exposureninja.com. Just put for attention of Andy, and Andy will be able to pick that up alongside our support team, who are also fantastic as well. So thank you, Andy, for coming and joining the stream. I really appreciate your insights. Are super useful. I'm sure everybody's found that super useful too. And I'll be back next Friday with some live website reviews. So do come back for that. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.